Well, good morning, everyone. The hearing will now come to order. Welcome to the Budget Committee's first in a series of hearings that will focus on economic growth and its impact on our nation's fiscal health and future prosperity. I will yield myself such time as I may consume for an opening statement. I have promised my colleague Brendan Boyles and my Democrat friends that I will not go 12 minutes this time. Is that okay with you, Jimmy? We're going to shoot for 14 and set a record. Today, we are starting this series on how we as a committee and as a Congress can contribute to reigniting American growth and prosperity. If we're going to bring down inflation and interest rates along with it, lift our economy out of recession, strengthen our nation's balance sheet, and stave off a debt crisis, I believe we have to do two primary things. We've got to reduce spending and grow the economy. That's the strategy that's worked in the past. That's the formula for success, I believe, to get us out of our current economic and financial mess. And that's the framework for our current debt ceiling proposal. Rein in spending, right-size the bloated bureaucracy where we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars more than even what the nonpartisan CBO said we'd be spending at this juncture. And return to pro-growth, pro-work, pro-energy policies that will unleash American prosperity once again. Today's hearing will focus on the economic growth part of this equation, and with $32 trillion of debt, 123% gross debt to GDP, the prospect of another $20 trillion or more added to the debt in 10 years, an annual deficit set to double, and interest payments, which we got a report on recently from CBO that will increase at least 40% year over year for this year at $663 billion just to service the debt, almost, well, over 3/4 of what we spend on all of national defense. If we grow the economy while controlling spending, we can create a glide path to a healthier balance sheet, a stronger economy, and a brighter future. Policies have consequences. I think we can all agree with that. I would submit to you that the reckless spending and the failed economic policies of the last 2 years have been disastrous. Higher taxes, an onslaught of regulations, which will be our focus today, an expansion of welfare without work, a whole of government assault on the lifeblood of our economy, American energy, and a whopping $10 trillion in spending, an unprecedented $6 trillion of which has been added to the national debt in just 2 years. Today, we're going to focus on the burden of excessive and overreaching regulations, how they kill jobs, suppress growth, reduce wages, and increase cost to consumers. Look, I used to work at the FDIC as chief of staff. I understand we need reasonable and limited rules for fair competition and consumer protection, basic safeguards for health and safety, but by congressional abdication and/or executive activism, we've created a Frankenstein of a fourth branch of government and a massive regulatory state that is compromising our freedoms, quenching our entrepreneurial spirit as a nation, and choking the life out of our economy. And I don't think that's hyperbolic. I think that may even be an understatement, and we'll dig into that today. The Code of the Federal Regulations now contains more than 1.3 million separate regulatory restrictions and costs on our economy of trillions of dollars. The cumulative effect of this seemingly infinite set of rules and regulations is devastating, to say the least, to our economy, our global competitiveness, and ultimately our quality of life as Americans. The Mercatus Center found that if regulations had remained at 1980 levels, GDP in 2012 would have been $4 trillion higher, and real incomes would be higher by $13,000 per person. I respect that President Trump took this on, I think, like no other president, this Herculean task of deregulating our economy, and I believe he had great success, and there was great reward for all Americans as a result. Instead of piling on more rules, his goal was to eliminate 8 regulations for every new regulation enacted, which ultimately saved consumers and job creators more than $220 billion per year. President Biden, on the other hand, has unleashed unprecedented a barrage of regulations and executive actions at a record clip. All told, his administration has added $360 billion in new regulatory cost on our economy, and he's on pace to double in 4 years the cost of the Obama White House in their regulations over 8 years. It's not just the economic cost of hurting our country, it's the circumvention, and I hope we can all agree with this because I'm certain both parties have contributed to this by abusing their executive authority. They've circumvented our democratic process to make policy whole cloth outside of the constitutional legislative process and against the will of the American people as a result. Advancing policies by regulatory fiat that could never pass the United States Congress undermines popular sovereignty and is an affront to our self-determination. Recent examples include expanding government dependency by executive fiat, pushing people by the hundreds of thousands onto Obamacare who already have work-sponsored health insurance, removing work requirements for able-bodied adults, allowing millions of people who are ineligible to stay on Medicaid rolls, forcing low-income families to pay for student loans of upper and middle-income individuals. The president has unilaterally used rules and regulations to target an entire industry, something in my lifetime I've never seen. Shutting down power plants, shaking down federal contractors for information about emissions, dictating what cars and trucks that Americans can buy and even what kind of stoves we can use. Getting rid of these needless and burdensome red tape and regulations will take a sustained effort. I welcome the input and collaboration from my Democrat friends. But if we don't reverse course, the greatest economy in the world will die a death of 1,000 regulatory cuts, and our children will not inherit the land of opportunity, but a desolate economy, a barren land, a bankrupt country, and a very bleak future. And with that, Rosie, an optimistic scenario, I yield to my friend, Mr. Boyle from Pennsylvania, for his opening statement.